Mom, Kevin. One day when I returned home from school, my mom and brother Kevin, who were supposed to be at home, were nowhere to be found. Evening came and they had not returned, nor had my dad come back from his office. I touched the handle of the refrigerator and hesitated for a moment. Normally, I wouldn't even go near the fridge as my mom would scold me for wasting electricity. My stomach growled loudly, and unable to bear the hunger any longer, I opened the door. Inside, there were only condiments like ketchup and mayonnaise. Desperate to satisfy my hunger, I took out the ketchup and sucked on the tube, but the sourness and sweet salty taste made me cough. I put my mouth directly under the faucet and poured tap water into my body. It didn't feel like it was filling my stomach at all. Just then I heard a noise from the entrance. Thinking that my mom and everyone had come back, I rushed to the entrance, but it was my grandma who stood there.
"Sherry, weren't you supposed to be in England?"
Both my grandma and I were surprised and looked at each other.
"Your dad, Mom, and Kevin just left for England. I thought you went with them."
The expression on my grandma's face was not only one of surprise, but also mixed with sadness and anger.
"This is terrible."
With a resolved nod, my grandma said,
"Sherry, from today, let's live at my house."
She smiled kindly and gave me a piggyback ride. Her back was broad and very warm. My name is Sherry Hansen, and I'm in my 20s. I currently live with my grandma, who has weak legs. Going up and down the apartment elevator is hard, but I have never thought of taking care of my grandma as a burden. On the contrary, I feel a debt of gratitude to my grandma that I can never fully repay. If it weren't for my grandma, I would be... My family environment has been complicated since I was young. I was bad at learning words, and even when I became a grade school student, my reading and writing were slower than other kids, not only in language studies, but also in other subjects. My grades were among the lowest. Both of my parents graduated from prestigious universities, and it seemed they resented me for not being academically inclined.
"Do Mom and Dad hate me?"
As I muttered to myself, not understanding why my parents hated me, I often fell asleep at night crying. I have an older brother named Kevin, who was 5 years my senior. Unlike me, Kevin had been quick to learn from a young age and always achieved top results in school tests. In school and around the neighborhood, he was called a prodigy, and for my parents, Kevin was a source of pride. My mom always compared me with Kevin and sighed, saying,
"Because of you, the whole family feels embarrassed. Please don't go outside more than necessary."
And with that blunt way of speaking, she clearly showed her displeasure. "I'm sorry, Mom." That was all I could do, always apologize. As the day of the test approached, my mom would always say,
"You'll disturb Kevin,"
and kick me out of the room, laying a cushion in the hallway for me.
"You'll sleep here for a while starting today,"
she told me, but it was during the cold winter and I shook my head in refusal. Seeing that, my dad, with a demonic expression, yelled in agreement with my mom.
"Don't complain, you useless girl. Be thankful you're not kicked out of the house."
At that time, I didn't know the word unreasonable, but I couldn't understand why only I had to suffer like this, and tears of frustration and anger flowed endlessly. My mom's harassment escalated, and eventually she made me kneel in the hallway and said,
"Eat this."
She poured dressing on vegetable peels that were supposed to be thrown away as garbage and made me eat them. Meanwhile, my family enjoyed warm soup in the heated dining room, chatting happily.
"Hey, did you know Kevin got the top score in his last test?"
"It's just a fluke. Thanks to Dad and Mom sending me to a top-level tutoring center, I can concentrate on my studies. Thank you as always." "Don't get cocky. Just because you topped your local elementary school, don't get too proud. You need to aim higher, Kevin." "I understand. I will continue to study diligently." After finishing the vegetable peels, I held the empty small plate and asked, "Mom, I want some warm soup too." My mom glared at me.
"Why don't you drink the leftover bathwater?"
She laughed with my dad and Kevin. Listening to the family's conversation, enduring hunger and cold, I sat on the hallway cushion, hugging my knees, waiting for dawn. In that situation, there appeared one person who became my ally. It was my paternal grandma. She had lived far away, but when she started a handmade class, the house she had lived in was too small, so she moved to a vacant house nearby. When I returned home from school, my grandma beckoned me with a smile.
Welcome back. Did you enjoy school? I've prepared some snacks, so have some before you go.
As dusk fell, I watched my grandma prepare dinner in the kitchen. When she noticed my gaze, she turned and asked,
Sherry, you should go home soon. Isn't your mom preparing dinner waiting for you?
I shook my head vigorously. Mom doesn't cook for me.
Then what do you usually eat?
Vegetable peels? Tap water? My grandma rushed to me and hugged me tightly.
From today, you'll eat at my house.
Really? Is that okay?
Of course. Sherry, you're still growing, so you need to eat a lot and grow big.
Thank you, Grandma. I couldn't stop the tears as I felt someone's warmth for the first time. From that day on, I began sneaking away to my grandma's house to eat meals, taking advantage of the times when my family was not around. Being able to eat a warm meal to my heart's content was such a reward. Now that I'm an adult, things that seemed ordinary were precious to me back then. Students started flocking to my grandma's new handmade class. Neither my grandma nor her students ever treated me as a nuisance, but I stayed quietly in the corner of the room drawing so as not to bother anyone. I was terrified of being disliked by my grandma as well. Without her, I would have no place to go at all. During those times, drawing was the only thing that could make me forget the unpleasantness. One day, knowing my situation, my grandma stormed to my parents' house and confronted them.
What are you thinking? Not even feeding her properly. Sherry is your child too.
But my dad just frowned in annoyance and retreated to his room, leaving my mom to deal with it. She sighed and responded,
It's part of a parent's duty to discipline a child for bad grades. Even if you are my mom-in-law, please don't interfere with our parenting.
After my grandma left, my parents scolded me harshly.
Why did you tell Grandma something like that? I come home tired from work, and this is just annoying.
Exactly. You're already incompetent, so don't cause us any more trouble.
I'm sorry. With a heavy heart, all I could do was apologize.
From tomorrow, stop going to Grandma's house to play. When someone like you walks around the neighborhood, it embarrasses us.
They warned me sternly. Feeling down, I walked through the hallway and met my brother Kevin coming out of his room.
You have it easy, always playing freely. I have to study hard every day because I'm capable.
I took his sarcastic remark to heart and glared back at him, too upset to reply. Then one day,
a friend of mine works in an educational institution in England, and when I told him about Kevin, he suggested, why not send him to college here?
To a college? But Kevin is still in elementary school.
No need to worry. It's a meritocracy over there. Regardless of age, those who can perform are given opportunities. Kevin could easily skip grades. Besides, we can't just keep him in America's lower-level education through middle and high school. It would be like throwing money away.
That's true. With Kevin's abilities, he should aim higher for his future. Okay, let's plan to move there as a family soon.
Thank you for doing this for me, Dad, Mom.
While listening to the discussion about moving abroad, I was overwhelmed with anxiety. Would I just be a burden to my family there? I called out to Kevin as he was about to return to his room. Kevin, should we really go to England? Kevin snorted and said dismissively,
That's not something you need to worry about,
and retreated to his room. I couldn't understand what Kevin meant by that. Trying to think positively about moving to England was hard, considering how my family had treated me so far. Then one day, when I came home from school and searched the house calling, Mom, Kevin, but I found no sign of my mom and brother. Evening came and they had not returned, nor had my dad. That day at school, my teacher had said something strange.
Is your dad and Mom coming to pick you up later?
The teacher looked puzzled, but I had no idea what she meant and was at a loss for words. What did that mean? Were my parents going to take me somewhere? However, no matter how long I waited, no one from my family came back. I hesitated for a moment before touching the handle of the refrigerator. Normally, I wouldn't even approach the fridge, as my mom would scold me for wasting electricity. My stomach growled loudly, and unable to bear the hunger any longer, I opened the door. Inside, there were only condiments like ketchup and mayonnaise. Anything is fine if it fills me up, I thought, and sucked the ketchup from the tube, but coughed due to the intense sourness and sweet salty flavor. I put my mouth directly under the faucet and poured tap water into my body. It didn't feel like it was filling my stomach at all. Then I heard the door open from the entrance.
Mom!
Thinking everyone had come back, I rushed to the entrance, only to find my grandma standing there.
Sherry, weren't you supposed to be in England?
Both my grandma and I were surprised and looked at each other.
Your dad, Mom, and Kevin just left for England. I thought you had gone with them.
There was not only surprise in my grandma's expression, but also a mix of sadness and anger.
This is just terrible.
With a determined nod, my grandma said,
Sherry, from today, let's live at Grandma's house.
She smiled kindly and gave me a piggyback ride. Her back was broad and very warm. From that day on, I started living with my grandma. When I returned home from school and said, I'm home, my grandma would respond with a bright, welcome back, from inside the house. That made me happier than anything. Sometimes while sleeping, I would dream of my parents and brother leaving me behind and going somewhere far away. When I woke up, my pillow would be soaked with tears. Abandoned by my family and having forgotten how to smile, my grandma told me,
Those people aren't your family. From now on, I am your family.
She hugged my trembling body tightly every night. Thanks to her, I stopped having those scary dreams.
Thank you for today.
My grandma's handmade class was popular and many students gathered there. On that day, I quietly drew pictures in a corner of the room so as not to be in the way. I really wanted to play more with my grandma, but I wasn't in a position to ask too much. If even my grandma started to dislike me, I would truly have nowhere to go. I never wanted to lose family again. After the class and seeing the students off, my grandma smiled widely and said,
Sherry, thanks for waiting. How about we eat some ice cream together?
She took out the ice cream bars she had bought from the fridge and handed one to me.
Grandma, it's delicious.
The ice cream bar was sweet and cold, but more than anything, I loved the time spent eating with my grandma. Trying to prolong those moments, I ate my ice cream slowly on purpose, but eventually it melted and dropped on the floor. I'm sorry, Grandma. Afraid of being disliked, I tensed up and instinctively apologized. If it were my mom next to me, I would have been punished by now. However, my grandma just chuckled and said, Oh dear, without shouting at me. Instead, she gently stroked my head and said, Don't be scared. Everyone makes mistakes. Instead, keep smiling, Sherry. I love your smiling face the most. From here on, I slowly began to regain my smile. After dinner, having bathed and getting ready for bed, my grandma would teach me how to read and write every night.
This is written like this. See? And now you try.
Following my grandma's example, I tried to write. At first, my writing was crooked or completely backward.
Don't rush. If you practice every day, you'll gradually get better at writing.
Her teaching was very clear, and slowly my aversion to words decreased. Within a few years, I could read and write well enough for daily life.
My summer reading assignment got praised by the teacher.
That's wonderful, Sherry. One day, as I quietly drew while watching my grandma's handmade class, a student took a break and approached, peeking over my shoulder at my drawing.
Wow, Sherry, you're good at drawing.
At that exclamation, other students gathered around to see my drawing, raising similar cheers.
She can draw this accurately with just a pencil? She might be a genius. Especially the expressions of the people and the lines of the clothes. They're too real, like at a professional level.
At that time, I was drawing my beloved grandma. I thought the students were just exaggerating out of consideration for my grandma. I was simply drawing what I saw directly onto my sketch pad. After the class and the students had left, my grandma intently looked at the drawing I had made. Those people were making a big deal, huh? I laughed jokingly, but my grandma gave me a serious look.
Not at all. You might have a talent for drawing, Sherry.
I was skeptical, saying, Really? But I recalled being praised in art class at school, where teachers and classmates had said, You're amazing. Back then, I thought they were just being kind because I had been abandoned by my family. Indeed, I had no idea how much talent I had in drawing. Am I really drawing that well?
Yes, you are. You have a promising future, Sherry. I know someone who runs an art school. How about you study there?
Oh, yes, I'd love to. It was my grandma who gave me a clear goal. 12 years have passed since then.
Sherry! Wow, the real deal. We're fans of yours, especially your affection series. The expressions of the people, the warm colors, just looking at them makes us cry.
Saying this, a woman much older than I burst into tears and reached out for a handshake. I also exchanged handshakes with the woman and smiled for the camera during the photo shoot, despite my wry smile.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to more of your work, Sherry.
The gallery was packed every day. I had achieved success as a contemporary realist painter known by the name Sherry.
Miss Hanson, you have a TV appearance scheduled for this evening, so we should start getting ready soon.
Understood, but wait a moment. I stopped the manager and looked down. A little girl was desperately reaching out, asking for a handshake. Thank you. Do you always support me? The girl smiled but didn't make a sound. A woman who seemed to be her mom hurried over and picked her up.
I'm sorry, she's not good at talking to people.
It's okay. Don't rush her. I used to struggle with writing myself, but if the family around her watches over her kindly, she'll find something she loves and eventually shine.
Thank you.
Despite stumbling over the pronunciation, the girl tried her best to express her feelings. You're welcome. As I shook the girl's hand again, her mom hugged her tightly and said with a broad smile,
I'm glad.
Seeing their interaction, I thought to myself that this child would surely be all right.
It's almost time.
Prompted by the manager, I began preparing to leave when the entrance of the hall became unusually noisy.
Please wait. I can't let people without tickets enter.
Looking towards the center of the commotion, I saw a shabbily dressed man and woman. The security guard was desperately trying to stop them, but they pushed past and marched straight towards me.
Let go. We're her family. We don't need tickets.
That's right. You have no right to stop us.
Although they looked completely different from what time had made them, the moment I heard their voices, I felt a chill down my spine. I wanted to run from the place, but my legs were frozen. The man and woman were my dad and mom.
It's your dad. You remember, right? Sherry?
And your mom. I'm so happy to see you.
As the security guards hesitated upon realizing they were my relatives, my parents casually walked up to me. Despite being only in their 40s, they looked much older, easily mistaken for being in their 50s or 60s.
You've become so impressive, Sherry. When we saw your face on a huge advertisement in New York, both your mom and I were shocked. We never imagined our daughter would become so famous.
I always believed in you. I knew you would make it big someday. I'm so glad we had you.
Stunned by the elderly couple's attitude, as if nothing had happened over these 12 years, I was at a loss for words.
What's the matter? You've been so quiet.
Who are you?
What are you saying? You haven't forgotten, have you? It's your dad.
Yes, you must be shy because we appeared so suddenly. You're just surprised, right? That's it, isn't it?
How selfish can people be? What are you doing here now? Though I asked, I deliberately avoided eye contact.
What do you mean, what are we doing here? From today, let's live together again. That's why we came.
I don't know these people. Please have them removed. I instructed the security guard in a flat tone, but the guard, unable to grasp the situation, looked confused. My family is only my grandma. I don't know these people.
You can't possibly still be holding a grudge about that time, can you?
Sorry about that. That was our fault.
My dad apologized insincerely, without any sign of genuine remorse.
But really, holding on to such old grudges, you're still a child, aren't you? We're family. It's normal for a family to live together. You need to grow up.
That's ridiculous. I couldn't contain my anger. The only person I can call family is my grandma. You abandoned me and went overseas, but she was the only one who stood by me. I won't recognize you as my family now. My mom clenched her lips and glared at me. Yes, that look. The cold gaze as if she were looking at something filthy.
If you hate us that much, we'll give up on living together. But in exchange, could you give us just one of your paintings?
Dad's out-of-place request left me struggling to comprehend.
Actually, we're a bit short on money. I heard that your paintings go for $1 million each. Wouldn't it be okay to give us just one?
You have your precious son, Kevin. Why don't you ask him for help? I don't pay for you. I will not give you any of my paintings.
Don't talk about Kevin. I don't even want to hear that guy's name.
Suddenly, my mom screamed almost like a shriek. Why would you say that? He's your son, isn't he?
That guy is no son of ours. Just a disgrace.
Then the two of them bitterly recounted what had become of Kevin over these past 12 years. After moving to England with his family, Kevin quickly entered a prestigious university thanks to his innate academic skills.
Up to that point, he met our expectations.
However, not long after that, Kevin lost his motivation to study. He stopped attending university and fell into a rough lifestyle, hanging out with bad company during the day. No matter what his parents said, he wouldn't listen, and eventually he stopped coming home. Over time, he even had run-ins with the police. The Kevin described by his parents had truly become a lost cause. Yet, I couldn't help but feel sympathy for Kevin. He must have been another victim of these parents' torment. A few days after my family had left for England, I found a notebook in Kevin's room. It contained his frustrations about being forced to study every day, not being allowed to play with friends. He wrote about how scoring A on a test in first grade had forever set his life's path by his parents' expectations. And he envied me because I was not expected to study. When we were kids, Kevin once told me he envied me, but reading his notebook made it all click into place. My dad spoke in a hushed tone, making sure others couldn't hear.
Just between us, Kevin's a lost cause. We tried to rehabilitate him by bringing him back home, but who knows where he is or what he's doing now. Recently, the police came asking about him.
He seems to be hanging out with dangerous people. Might be involved with one of those scam groups that are all the rage now. It's only a matter of time before he gets arrested.
So, as you can see, if you pity us being tormented by such a foolish son, please, could you just give us one of your paintings? That alone would save us. It's your chance to do a filial deed, isn't it?
Saying this, my parents started to kneel before me.
Enough of this nonsense.
The one who shouted suddenly was my grandma in her wheelchair.
I've been quiet, listening all this time. Kevin's gone bad, so now you turn to Sherry for help? You must be joking. You were the ones who abandoned her.
Ugh, Mom, why are you here?
It's my precious granddaughter's exhibition. It's only natural for family to come.
With that, my grandma glared at my dad and Mom. You two are no longer family or anything else to her. You're just strangers. Now understand and get out. Hey, security, what are you doing? After being scolded by my grandma, the bewildered security guards started to act.
Wait a minute, we have our own ideas.
Ideas? Let's hear these ideas of yours.
You kidnapped our daughter, didn't you?
Kidnap? You were the ones who abandoned her and went overseas. Though my grandma was furious, I managed a wry smile and said, Calm down, Grandma. Getting all worked up like that will just raise your blood pressure. Then, facing my smirking parents, I said firmly, I have some unfortunate news for you. Legally, my grandma and I are now mom and daughter. Thus, she cannot be accused of kidnapping.
What nonsense are you talking about? That's impossible without the consent of us, her real parents.
Actually, it's possible. I was adopted by my grandma when I was 15. Legally, anyone over 15 can be adopted without the consent of their biological parents.
Don't be ridiculous. How can that even be allowed?
As my parents continued to fuss and tried to sit down in the gallery, they were escorted out by police officers who had been called to the scene.
Sherry, are you all right?
My grandma asked, rubbing my back with her usual kind smile. Don't worry, Grandma, I'm fine, I replied, returning her smile with a wide one of my own. After being taken to the police station, my parents were reportedly scolded severely by the officers.
Are you even fit to be parents?
A friend who had moved from the cultural to the social section of a newspaper had let me know discreetly. Later, I learned through the news that Kevin had been arrested for fraud. The image of Kevin being put into a police vehicle appeared on the TV screen, a far cry from the prodigy he once was called. My parents ended up facing hefty damages for the crimes committed by Kevin, and with reporters crowding outside their home daily, they were on the run.
Help us out, will you? Aren't we your real parents?
Yes, have you forgotten that we were the ones who brought you into this world?
Despite their repeated attempts to approach my home and studio, my grandma and I decided to move to a high-security condo to prevent them from easily reaching us.
I'm sorry to have you take care of an old grandma like me.
No, I'm very happy. After all, I owe everything I am today to you, Grandma. Around this time, my grandma started to fall ill frequently. I hugged her tightly from behind and said, I love you, Grandma. Her back had grown much smaller, but it was as warm as ever.